The Mother's Return, a 20-year secret unveiled. Chapter 1, A Dream Realized. Austin, Texas, 2004. The Texas sun beat down, warm and golden, a fitting backdrop for the burgeoning hope in my heart. After years of struggling with infertility, years of yearning for a child, my husband, David, and I finally received the call that would change our lives forever. Miss Vance, Mr. Miller, we have a placement for you. A baby boy, 8 months old. His name is Leo. The words were a melody, a dream realized. Leo. He was everything we had ever wished for. His bright, curious eyes, his infectious giggle, the way his tiny fingers wrapped around ours. He filled our lives with a light we hadn't known was missing. We lived in a cozy, tree-lined neighborhood in Austin, our home transformed into a haven of warmth and laughter. The adoption process had been rigorous, emotionally taxing, but ultimately fulfilling. We had gone through a reputable agency, Hope and Hearth Adoptions, based in Houston, Texas. The records indicated Leo's birth mother was a young woman, just 18, who had made the difficult decision to place her son for adoption, wishing for him to have a stable, loving home she felt unable to provide at the time. The adoption was closed, meaning no contact with the birth mother, a condition that, while painful for her, offered us a sense of security and a clean slate to build our family. We respected her choice, her immense sacrifice. Leo grew, vibrant and curious. He loved exploring the hiking trails around Barton Springs, chasing fireflies in our backyard, and listening to David strum his guitar. He was a bright, empathetic child, always full of questions, always eager to learn. Our life was idyllic, a testament to the power of love and family, regardless of biology. We were always open with Leo about his adoption. From a young age, we told him in simple, loving terms that he grew in another woman's tummy and that she chose us to be his parents because she loved him very much and wanted the best for him. We had a life book filled with photos, documents, and a simple narrative about his adoption journey. We wanted him to know his story, to feel secure in his identity, and to understand that his birth mother's choice came from a place of profound love. He seemed to grasp it, embracing our family as his own, never questioning our bond. Our family expanded. 2 years after Leo, we were blessed with our biological daughter, Emily, a vivacious, curly-haired girl who instantly adored her older brother. Leo was a doting big brother, patient and protective. They were inseparable, a joyous, chaotic duo. Our home buzzed with the energy of a happy family, built on love, mutual respect, and the quiet understanding that family was forged in the heart, not just in blood. As Leo approached his teenage years, he occasionally asked more questions about his birth mother. What did she look like? Was she nice? Why couldn't she keep me? We answered as honestly as we could, based on the limited, non-identifying information the agency had provided. She was young, Leo, and she wanted you to have everything she couldn't give you. She sounds like a very loving and brave woman. He seemed satisfied with our answers, never pressing, always secure in our love. We never once worried about the closed adoption being challenged. The agency had assured us of its finality, its legal impermeability. We had followed every rule, jumped through every hoop. This was our son, our family. Life continued its beautiful, ordinary course. Leo excelled in school, developed a passion for photography, and was looking forward to applying to colleges. He was everything we could have dreamed of and more. Our little boy, now a strapping young man of 18, preparing to embark on his own journey into adulthood. As he turned 20 in 2024, our lives in Austin were still filled with that golden Texas light. He was applying to photography programs, his future stretching bright and full of promise. We were planning a big celebration for his 20th birthday, a milestone that felt like a quiet triumph for our family. Little did we know that golden light was about to be abruptly, violently extinguished. The legal impermeability of a closed adoption was about to be shattered. The ghost of Leo's past, a presence we had quietly acknowledged but never feared, was about to materialize, not with a gentle knock, but with a forceful, devastating blow. The dream we had realized, the family we had so carefully built, was about to be tested in the most unimaginable way, threatening to unravel 2 decades of love and trust, all at the hands of a woman we believed had chosen to remain a silent, anonymous memory. Chapter 2: The Knock on the Door. Austin, Texas, July 14th, 2024, 3 days before Leo's 20th birthday. The air was thick with summer humidity, but our home was cool and bustling with birthday preparations. Leo was out with friends, Emily was at a sleepover, and David and I were in the kitchen happily baking Leo's favorite chocolate cake. The scent of cocoa and vanilla filled the air, a comforting aroma of domestic bliss. Then the doorbell rang. It was an unusual, insistent ring, not the casual chime of a neighbor. I glanced at David, a small frown on my face. "Expecting anyone?" I asked. He shook his head. I opened the door. Standing on our porch, silhouetted against the bright Texas sun, were 2 figures. One, a tall, imposing man in a crisp blue uniform, a police officer, badge gleaming. The other, a woman. She was slender, with long, dark hair, pulled back, and "Nat, my son is to be returned to my custody immediately." Louisiana. A cold, heavy stone dropped into my stomach. We had adopted Leo through an agency in Texas, with all legal proceedings handled within Texas law. Louisiana had nothing to do with it. This had to be some terrible mistake, or a cruel, elaborate hoax. David stepped forward, his face pale with alarm. "This is impossible," he stated, his voice firm despite the shock. "Our adoption was finalized, legally binding, 20 years ago. We have all the documents. This is our son." "The documents are fraudulent," Sarah Thompson declared, her eyes burning with an almost zealous conviction. "I was a scared, coerced teenager. I never gave true consent, and now I'm here to reclaim what's mine." The police officer, though appearing to follow procedure, seemed taken aback by her vehemence. He looked from her to us, his expression unreadable. "Ms. Vance, Mr. Miller, we simply need to see your adoption decree, and we need to confirm the child's identity." "Leo isn't here," I said, my voice shaking. "He's with friends." "Then we will wait," Sarah Thompson said, her lips forming a thin, hard line. "I will wait as long as it takes. I've waited 20 years for this." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. 20 years of peace, of love, of building our family, threatened by a legal document from a state we had no connection to, by a woman who claimed our son as hers. The chocolate cake smell in the kitchen suddenly felt nauseating. The golden Texas light outside seemed to mock our shattered serenity. The knock on the door was not just a knock. It was an explosion, detonating 2 decades of assumed security, leaving us reeling in its devastating wake. My adopted son, my heart, was about to become the center of a battle I never imagined. A battle for his very identity, and for the family we had so carefully built. Chapter 3: The Legal Whirlwind. The arrival of Sarah Thompson and the police officer, wielding a court order from Louisiana, plunged our lives in Austin, Texas, into a legal maelstrom. The initial shock gave way to a frantic scramble for legal counsel and a desperate need to protect Leo from the unfolding nightmare. Our longtime family lawyer, Martha Peterson, was immediately contacted. She was incredulous. A finalized, closed adoption challenged after 20 years. It's almost unheard of, Amelia, especially across state lines. She assured us that Texas adoption law was robust, designed to protect adoptive parents and, most importantly, the stability of the child. However, Sarah Thompson's claim was based on a Louisiana statute regarding coerced consent in adoptions, a law that had been retroactively applied in a few rare, highly publicized cases. She claimed that as a young, impoverished, and unrepresented minor, she had been unduly pressured into signing away her parental rights, and that the original paperwork from Hope and Hearth Adoptions was flawed or even fraudulent in its assertion of her informed consent. This was devastating. We had trusted the agency implicitly, believed we had followed every legal step. The idea that our 20-year-old adoption could be invalidated by a claim of coercion from another state was terrifying. The police officer, though initially sympathetic, was clear. While they couldn't unilaterally take Leo, Sarah Thompson's court order meant they had to investigate, to ensure Leo's whereabouts and well-being. This meant a formal report, official interviews, and the looming threat of further legal action. When Leo returned home, happy and oblivious, just hours after Sarah Thompson's visit, David and I had to make the agonizing decision, how much to tell him. We chose honesty, in broad strokes. We sat him down, our hearts heavy, and explained that a woman claiming to be his birth mother had appeared, challenging his adoption. Leo's reaction was a mix of confusion, shock, and a quiet hurt. He looked from my tear-streaked face to David's grim one. "But you're my parents," he said, his voice small, disbelieving. "This is my home. Who is she?" We showed him the only photo we had of his birth mother from the agency files, a grainy, impersonal image from 20 years ago. It bore little resemblance to the gaunt, fervent woman who had stood on our doorstep. The next few weeks were a blur of legal consultations, frantic phone calls to Hope and Hearth Adoptions, who, 20 years later, were struggling to locate the original caseworker and detailed records, and a terrifying sense of uncertainty hanging over our family. Martha Peterson worked tirelessly, filing motions in Texas court to uphold the adoption, arguing that the Louisiana order had no jurisdiction, and seeking a restraining order against Sarah Thompson. Meanwhile, Sarah Thompson, it turned out, was a member of a small but increasingly vocal online community dedicated to reclaiming children from fraudulent adoptions. She had found a pro bono lawyer in New Orleans, Louisiana, who specialized in these niche cases, often targeting older, closed adoptions. Her lawyer argued that Leo, though an adult, was still a child in the context of her original coerced consent claim, and thus the Louisiana court retained jurisdiction over the validity of the adoption. The media caught wind of the story. 20-year adoption challenged by birth mother. Biological mother fights for custody of adult son. Our names, Leo's name, our address, everything became public. Reporters camped outside our house. It was a humiliating, terrifying invasion of our privacy, painting us, the adoptive parents, as potentially complicit in a fraudulent adoption, which was utterly false. Leo, initially confused, quickly became distressed. He hated the cameras, the whispering neighbors. He struggled with the idea that his very existence, his identity, was suddenly under scrutiny, potentially challenged by a woman he didn't know, a woman who seemed to want to erase his entire life with us. He started withdrawing, his bright spark dimming. The first hearing in Texas court was tense. Sarah Thompson was present, her eyes burning with an almost messianic zeal. She delivered an emotional testimony, portraying herself as a desperate teenager forced to give up her child, now a reformed, stable woman ready to embrace her son. It was a compelling narrative designed to elicit sympathy, and it worked on some of the journalists in the courtroom. Martha, however, calmly presented our adoption decree, the 20-year history of Leo's life with us, the stability and love he had known. She argued that Leo was an adult, capable of making his own choices, and that any challenge to his adoption should involve his wishes, not just the claims of a biological parent who had been absent for 2 decades. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with a reputation for protecting children's welfare, listened intently. She acknowledged the complexity of the Louisiana claim, but emphasized the paramount importance of Leo's best interests and the stability of his established family. She ruled that Leo, as an adult, had the right to speak for himself. She also issued a temporary restraining order against Sarah Thompson, preventing direct contact with Leo, pending a full hearing. It was a small victory, a temporary reprieve, but the legal battle was far from over. Sarah Thompson's lawyer vowed to fight, promising to bring the case to a higher court, arguing for the retroactive application of Louisiana law and the fraud of the original adoption. The legal whirlwind was disorienting, terrifying. Our lives, once so settled and secure, were now the battlefield, our family unit under siege. The dream realized had become a nightmare. The love we had for Leo, tested by the relentless pursuit of a woman who had resurfaced from the past, threatening to rip our family apart with a single, devastating legal claim. The fight for our son, for our family, had just begun. Chapter 4: The Truth Unveiled. The legal battle stretched on, a relentless, emotionally draining war of attrition. Sarah Thompson, driven by an unwavering conviction that her rights had been violated, pursued every legal avenue, attempting to invalidate Leo's adoption. Our lives in Austin, Texas, remained under a microscope, the media's glare adding to the immense pressure. Leo, turning 20 during this tumultuous period, was understandably struggling. The constant questions, the public scrutiny, and the knowledge that a stranger claimed him as her own shook his sense of identity. We tried to shield him, but the emotional toll was undeniable. He became quieter, more withdrawn, his passion for photography temporarily dulled. Our legal team, led by Martha Peterson, worked tirelessly. They delved deep into the history of Hope and Hearth adoptions, meticulously re-examining every document from 20 years ago. They also investigated Sarah Thompson's background, seeking to understand the full context of her claims. What they uncovered was a complex, heartbreaking, and ultimately infuriating truth. Sarah Thompson had indeed been a young, vulnerable 18-year-old in 2004, living in New Orleans, Louisiana, when she became pregnant. She had come from a difficult background, estranged from her family, and struggling financially. The initial records indicated she had approached a local Louisiana adoption agency first, but due to complexities, her case was referred to Hope and Hearth Adoptions in Houston, Texas, which had a broader network and resources. Here's where the crucial details emerged. The original adoption paperwork, while seemingly robust on the surface, did indeed contain a critical flaw. Due to an administrative error by a junior caseworker at Hope and Hearth, who was no longer with the agency and whose records were sparse, a specific, minor but legally significant notification requirement under Louisiana law for birth mothers under duress had been overlooked. It was a technicality, a clerical error, but one that Sarah Thompson and her lawyer were now expertly leveraging. Furthermore, Sarah Thompson had a powerful, if sympathetic, story. After giving birth to Leo, she had immediately regretted her decision. Over the years, her life had stabilized. She had gone back to school, become a social worker, and found a supportive community. She claimed her decision to place Leo for adoption had been made under immense coercion and psychological duress, exacerbated by her young age and lack of support. She had spent 2 decades believing she had been manipulated, that her son had been taken from her. Her current lawyer was framing this not as a malicious act, but as a righteous quest for a mother to reclaim her stolen child. The fraud wasn't that we, the adoptive parents, had done anything wrong. It was that the process itself had a technical, albeit unintentional, flaw in her state, which could potentially invalidate the finality of the adoption. The legal system, in its attempt to balance the rights of birth parents with the stability of adoptive families, was now faced with a heartbreaking dilemma. The turning point came when Leo, after weeks of quiet contemplation, expressed a desire to meet Sarah Thompson. He wanted to understand, to see her, to hear her story directly. It was a terrifying prospect for David and me, but we knew it was his right, his choice. The meeting was arranged in a neutral, supervised setting, facilitated by a family therapist. It was an emotionally charged encounter. Sarah Thompson, dressed simply, approached Leo with tears in her eyes. "My son," she whispered, reaching out to him. Leo, initially hesitant, listened intently as she poured out her 20-year odyssey of regret, yearning, and her unwavering belief that she had been wronged. She spoke of the circumstances of his birth, her desperation, her feeling of being pressured, and her enduring love for him, a love that had driven her to find him. Leo listened, his expression unreadable. Then, when she finished, he spoke, his voice calm and clear. "I understand that you loved me, and that you suffered, but you are not my mother." He looked directly at me and David. "They are my parents. They raised me. They loved me. This is my family." His words, simple and profound, cut through the legal complexities, the emotional narratives, and the media frenzy. He wasn't a pawn in a custody battle. He was a person with his own identity, his own relationships, and his own unwavering sense of who his parents were. The therapist, witnessing this powerful exchange, provided a crucial report to the court, emphasizing Leo's clear bond with us and his expressed desire to remain with the family he had known for 2 decades. In the subsequent court hearing, armed with this powerful testimony from Leo himself, Martha Peterson delivered a compelling argument. While the technicality of the Louisiana statute might be acknowledged, the overarching principle of the best interests of the child, in this case, an adult capable of articulate self-determination, must prevail. Leo's life, his stability, his identity were with us. His wishes were paramount. The judge, visibly moved by Leo's courage and clarity, took the case under advisement. The truth had been unveiled, not just the legal technicality, but the human truth of a mother's pain, an agency's error, and a son's unwavering love for the family who raised him. The legal whirlwind was beginning to slow, but the emotional scars, particularly on Leo, ran deep. The battle for his identity was far from over, but his own voice, finally, had brought a powerful, undeniable clarity to the agonizing truth. Chapter 5. The Unbroken Thread. The judge's ruling, after weeks of agonizing deliberation, finally arrived. It was a landmark decision, acknowledging the technical flaw in the original adoption paperwork under Louisiana law, but ultimately upholding the validity of Leo's adoption in Texas. The judge stated that while Sarah Thompson's claim of coerced consent held some legal basis for review under Louisiana's unique statute, Leo's established life with us for 2 decades, his clear bond with David and me, and his unequivocal testimony as an adult were paramount. The best interests of the child principle, applied to an adult's self-determination, prevailed. Sarah Thompson's petition to reclaim custody was denied. The courtroom was silent as the verdict was read. Sarah Thompson, though visibly devastated, accepted the decision with a quiet, heartbreaking dignity. Her lawyer, though disappointed, acknowledged the uniqueness of the case. For David and me, it was an overwhelming wave of relief, heavy with the weight of the past few months. Our family was safe. Leo was safe. The media, who had followed every twist and turn of the 20-year adoption challenge, reported the verdict extensively, emphasizing Leo's powerful testimony. The story became a national conversation about adoption ethics, birth-parent rights, and the evolving concept of best interests when a child becomes an adult. The immediate aftermath was about healing. The public scrutiny had been immense, and Leo had borne the brunt of it. We enrolled him in therapy, and as a family, we sought counseling to process the trauma. It was a long road. Leo slowly re-engaged with his photography, finding solace behind the lens, capturing the world through his own unique perspective. He gained a quiet confidence, a strength forged in the crucible of having his identity challenged and then firmly reasserted. Our relationship with Sarah Thompson, surprisingly, found a tentative, unspoken resolution. Through the therapist, and later through carefully mediated exchanges, Leo, on his own terms, chose to have a very limited, occasional correspondence with her. He understood her pain, her yearning, but his heart, his life, was with us. She in turn respected his wishes, her initial fervor giving way to a more profound, albeit sorrowful, acceptance. She would occasionally send him a birthday card, filled with quiet, loving words, and he would sometimes reply with a brief, polite note. It was a fragile, complex connection, a thread that acknowledged a biological tie without usurping the profound bond of family. Our adoption agency, Hope and Hearth, faced a full internal review following the case, tightening their protocols and ensuring that such clerical errors would never occur again, particularly regarding cross-state legal requirements. They apologized profusely for the oversight that had led to our ordeal, a testament to their commitment to ethical practices despite the inadvertent error. Life in Austin, Texas, slowly returned to a new normal. The golden Texas light, once extinguished, began to shine again, imbued with a deeper hue of resilience. Leo went off to college, pursuing his passion for photography, a confident, self-aware young man. Emily, our daughter, remained his fiercely protective younger sister, their bond unwavering. Our family, forged through love and choice, had weathered the storm. The 20-year secret had been unveiled, threatening to unravel everything. But instead, it had strengthened us, revealing the true meaning of family. Not just a biological connection, but a profound tapestry woven from shared experiences, unwavering love, and an unspoken understanding that transcends any legal challenge. The biological mother's return, initially a devastating invasion, ultimately became a painful catalyst for a deeper understanding of our family's unique journey. It was a reminder that love, not blood, defines who we are, and that the threads of connection, once woven, are truly unbreakable, even after 2 decades, even when challenged by the fiercest of storms. Our story, once a dream realized, then a nightmare endured, finally became a testament to the enduring power of unconditional love and the unbreakable bonds of family.